For years, I told people I would love to live in a cave in the wilderness, away from the interference of others. But what happened to me in July 2024 has changed my whole outlook. Now I don't feel safe unless accompanied by a group of friends when going outdoors. Firstly, I'd like to explain that I'm from the UK, Yorkshire in England to be exact. I'm very close to the moors and headed there a couple of times each year during the spring and summer to camp on my own for a weekend. My family thought I'd been watching too many Bear Grylls television programs, but in all honesty, I think I probably have some sort of social anxiety disorder and crave to be on my own, or did anyway. I love the solitude. It was a Saturday morning, and I parked my car in a village called Osmotherley in North Yorkshire that lies at the edge of the North Yorkshire Moors National Park, with access to the various walks like the Cleveland Way and others. My plan was always to start on a designated route, but then veer off across open moorland to pitch my tent out of the prying eyes of any Karen disguised as a hiker. Wild camping isn't allowed, and if seen, I'm sure they would remind me of that. If done properly though, I could manage without being spotted. I had a very small tent and took basic supplies, so my rucksack was no larger than most hikers carry. After sorting my gear and locking up my car, I headed to the route along with a few hikers, but I hung back. Experience has taught me that if they noticed I was alone, they might offer that I join up with them for safety, and that's the last thing I needed. Once up on the moors, I sat until the hikers behind me all went past, and when I saw an opportunity, I headed away from the path and onto the moors. After a while, I turned to look behind me. I could see more hikers on the trail, but they seemed to be ignoring me. So I thought, perfect. First step done. The way I normally did it was, I would just walk until I couldn't see the trail, or anyone on it. Then just look for something with a little cover like a patch of heather or a few trees. I'd been walking for around 40 minutes when I found the perfect spot. It had both heather and gorse bushes, so I tucked myself behind them and looked at the beautiful view beyond. This was where I would spend my weekend. In the silence, apart from bird calls, I pitched my tent close to the thick gorse and settled myself down beside it to listen to an audiobook. I had downloaded it earlier on my phone. There was never much reception up on the moors. Periodically, I would grab some food out of my bag and sit there eating, listening, and watching the beautiful view. This was my heaven. At around 9:30, it started to get dark, so I placed everything inside my tent, ready to spend the rest of the night there. As I slid into my sleeping bag, I was sure that I was about to have a quiet, uninterrupted night. That was not how it turned out. It was the start of the most terrifying and longest night of my life. I had a small battery-operated light that I draped a dark cloth over, so as not to illuminate my tent from outside. I set it up so I could see my water bottle and food. By now, it was pitch dark, and at around midnight, I decided to visit the bushes to relieve myself for the last time before I went to sleep. I took a small torch that I had with me so that I didn't end up head first in spiky gorse, but intended only to use it when I had to. While I was standing near the bushes, I was looking into the darkness when I noticed a small orange-colored light in the distance. I stared at it, but couldn't make out what it could be, and the darkness was so disorienting that I couldn't even tell how far off the ground it was, worried that it was someone with a torch up on the moors. I darted back to my tent, zipped myself in, and turned off my light so if it was someone heading my way, they hopefully wouldn't see me. After an hour of waiting in the dark and in silence, I began to think it maybe had been a plane in the distance and had not been near the ground at all. I felt a little less rattled, so I started listening to my audiobook again, but just in case I only used one earpiece so that I could still hear if anyone approached. After 20 minutes or so, I began to feel sleepy, and just as I was about to turn off my phone, I heard an electrical hissing in my headphone that totally drowned out the audiobook. I pulled out and reinserted the jack plug, but that didn't work. The hissing was still there. Just then, the front of my tent was suddenly lit up with an orange light. This was no torch. It was as if a floodlight had been switched on and directed toward me. It was almost like day had suddenly sprung up, My stomach churned, and I thought for sure I had been caught by a warden or owner of that particular place. Excuses and apologies started swimming around in my head. But just then, the hissing in my ear started to form into words. It was mechanical and said, "Come with us." This terrified me, and I felt like a rabbit stuck in headlights. What do I do? It was clear to me that what was waiting outside my tent had the ability to transmit to my phone, and that petrified me. My mind was reeling, and I thought, did I wander onto military property? Are there armed soldiers waiting to arrest me? Without even thinking, I found myself shouting, "Who are you?" I heard no answer to my question, but I could see the light being diffused by what had to be movement, and I knew that someone was coming forward toward my tent. As I stared at the moving shadows on my tent wall, suddenly a hand was placed onto the material, and the black silhouette was very clear. The scariest thing was, that shape was not a human hand. As I crouched in my tent glaring, my eyes traced the outline of that hand, and it had 3 extremely long fingers and a thumb. As it slowly pulled away, I could see the fingers closing and scraping on the material. It was clearly a living thing. By now, I was crying with fear and managed to shout, "Leave me alone!" with a cracked voice. Within seconds, the light began to pulse and then just blinked out. I was praying that whatever it was had gone, but I was too scared to look. I noticed that my phone was completely drained of battery, and also my lamp and torch. I lay in my tent, staring into the darkness and listening for the rest of the night. Every sound, even the slightest rustle of grass, had me shaking. It was a very long and terrifying night. At dawn, I slowly opened the zip of my tent and peeked out. It was such a relief to see nothing there, so I quickly grabbed my rucksack and headed straight out of there. As far as I know, my tent is still up there on the moors.